Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to talk about the light and darkness. And this is going to sound very, let's say, elemental to a lot of people in terms of it's like the building blocks of everything, and it is the building blocks of everything. Light is a creative substance that when you put a thought form into it, it creates matter. Okay, but darkness does the same thing in terms of the fear is what we are creating now with our viruses and the fungi that are attacking people with COVID-19. There's this weekend, I'm going to be at one of our little local street fairs, and I'm going to be talking about a problem that's affecting this area, and that is the sudden oak death, which is very similar to bee colony collapse disorder, Panama disease in bananas, and there's even a problem with cucumber pickles. It's kind of the same thing. So let's say that you have a darkness that's been going around the fears, and they're manifesting these fungi, and they're manifesting viruses and things like that. The whole idea is when we're creating is to create with the light, and that is by intent. You're creating by intent when you come up with a plan that benefits everyone. Okay, so now let's consider that the entire body of spiritual books that have been written, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of books have been written since the spiritual movement started back in the 1880s or 1890s, something like that. When it started, they were talking about light and darkness, and there's always been a battle between light and darkness forever. Okay, so this goes way back forever, as long as we've been here, understanding that there's this battle between good and bad, light and darkness, and it's a sense of duality. So we create, the whole idea is that we create our reality. We're always creating, we're always doing something creative. But are we creating by intent, where we come up and we have a plan, or are we creating by default? And what we believe is our thought forms, and what we're thinking about are being manifested all the time. So what we have to do is we have to learn to control our thinking from the standpoint of, instead of being hit all the time by all the darkness and the fear, to come up and create by intent and coming up with an idea. An example of this is, it's something everybody has experienced this, so this is not, the example was not the right word, but a way to look at this is that we are always creating, and Lady Gaia came to us at the prayer circle and said we could create anything we wanted. Okay, so we were all going. One woman, the reason I'm talking about the books, the spiritual books, is because one of the women had been collecting spiritual books for many, many years, and her dream was to create a library of spiritual books so that people could go in and read them and understand them, and realize they pretty much say the same thing. When she didn't know how to make her library come about, and that is basically an example, you could say, of somebody who had an idea and wanted to create by intent, and all of the books that she was holding onto for part of her future, basically it was like we're creative, but we didn't know how to create by intent. So then I started to channel books. My two of the women from the prayer circle, one wanted to create a healing arts center, and the other one wanted to do her library, and they both passed away because they couldn't figure out. They both died of pancreatic cancer. That became one of our project ideas, how to overcome pancreatic cancer. That's because they were functioning outside of their capacity. They didn't know how to create their projects. Okay, how about when you're 80 years old and you have no money, and your goal is to come up with something so remarkable like a healing arts center that where are you going to get the money? Where are you going to get everything? And that's where the planning process comes in. Okay, so being able to do that was possible, but it wasn't until they passed away that, and ironically, I inherited all of the spiritual books here from the library. So, and then I'm responsible for helping to create the Healing Arts Center. But I can't do that kind of thing unless people are willing to actually. You can't do somebody else's project. There isn't anybody who can step in and do it. You can't make somebody else do it. So it has to be something that is done with an idea, and it's like we're born with a purpose in life, and if you don't do it, then nobody's going to be there to do it. Our purposes are unique. So when after they had passed away, that's when I started to get information about the planning process and how if you understand the root cause of a problem, then with the planning process you can solve the problem. And that's where we are now, is how about dealing with all these issues. When I introduce an idea, I'm just putting it out there and letting people think about it and debate it and such. The plan for world peace requires everybody working together, so it's going through the planning process, and it has to address the root cause of the problems, or it makes it worse, and it has to go through all these steps. So creating by default, like a virus or fungi and a new disease, do we need those anymore? Do we have to keep reacting out of fear? Or can we start to turn it around and create by intent? So the whole idea is this idea of the creation of the international government that will help solve all these problems. We can create anything we want. You don't have to help make it happen. You can help make it happen by creating your project in a way, and then just vote on it. Is this something that allows you to create whatever you want? We at the prayer circle, we had been praying for people in crisis and such, and then it transitioned and it said, okay, now what would you like to do? So the woman who was the healer basically wanted to do the Healing Arts Center, like taking the idea to the next step, taking it always to the next step. Now, an example of this is Stonehenge. Okay, so Stonehenge, and this is part of our first government proposal, Stonehenge started out with I'm not going to tell you the whole history of it because it's not necessary to look at now, but the first stage of it was just a series of posts in the ground, like a big circle with posts in the ground. And what does that have to do with burying the dead? It doesn't. So basically what it was for conflict resolution. An example of this, so let's say the posts in the ground were designed to, if you had two groups of people, two kings, and they were at war with each other, and they stood in a circle, let's take a step back. Let's say one came from the south to the Salisbury Plain, the other one came from the northwest, and they were feasted housed. They were feasted at Durrington Walls, and they were feasted at Woodhenge And it was a series of posts in the ground, like concentric circles, that were inside of each other. So basically what they did was these posts allowed them to put a roof on it. It's rainy, that part of the world, and so they were able to thatch a roof on it. They had walls, maybe wattle and daub type walls in there, so they could put a center fireplace, and then people could be housed in the different rings, and so then when the holy day came, then they would march along the big wide avenue that comes from Woodhenge and Stonehenge, from that area. Say they get up and eat breakfast or whatever, and then they would march, and then by sunrise they did their rite of conflict resolution by being in this circle. Another circle. A circle is kind of an interesting geometric shape because there is no beginning and no end, and there's also no place that's higher than another place. It's all equal, and that's the first requirement for conflict resolution, is that everybody has to be seen as equal. There might be two kings, but they're still, and they did put a mound there that allowed the people in charge to stand up on the mound, and then they had a higher mound around it that was basically designed for security purposes. Anyway, to go back to this idea about creativity, so the first stage was this rite of conflict resolution, but then it really didn't solve the problem. So the next step was to explain to the people there, the two kings and all the soldiers, that you cannot get your life by getting revenge on somebody else. You cannot get your life by waging war. Basically all it does is kill a lot of your soldiers, and if you decimate your soldiers, you don't have any security left. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a long-running war that destroys your economy, because it just puts you into a really bad place. So the next one had to do with putting the standing stones in. The big five, they look like portals or doorways, and we'll go into that in the future about how the doorways work. That, in other words, they're kind of like the world peace marketing strategy, which is what we're doing now. We are recreating Stonehenge in England and the next level, but we're applying the same information now to help bring world peace. If it can work in Stonehenge, it can also work using the internet and teaching people over YouTube. Now then the next thing, the step was that if you're standing there trying to explain to a bunch of warriors, and they didn't have any way to magnify their voices, really, basically what they did was they put up those stones, and then that kept the sound. Acoustics is really good in there. Okay, so you see, step by step it evolved. Now the next step is, the last step of Stonehenge was it was vandalized, and now the next step is what to deal with the conflict. If it could end wars, it didn't have any protocol for ending genocides, and that's where we are right now. Is a global genocide is devolving across the planet. So now we've come to the point where Stonehenge, introducing the international government, is what's going to help with the idea of Stonehenge. Mankind has for the next level why it was vandalized, and which led to a series of hostile takeovers by lots of different people over the years, like the Romans and the Saxons and the Normans, and I don't know much about English history, but I know that they've had a series of hostile takeovers. So if that's the issue right now, is hostile takeovers, that's where we are now. is addressing this idea about the light and the darkness. If your plan is to do a hostile takeover because you're reacting out of fear, then it's in nobody's best interest for that to happen. Creating by intent allows the light to come back, and it allows the end of the problems associated with bee colony collapse disorder. We're dealing with the food supply right now. If you have a plan that is to terrorize people with maximum pressure, you're going to use maximum pressure. I'm the most powerful person on the planet, and I'm going to use maximum pressure on you to get what I want. That is a very scary thing for people, okay? And that brought a lot of darkness into the world in terms of fear associated with that. We have our unalienable right from our Creator to be able to create the life we want, and that doesn't include maximum pressure by people who have bigger guns than you have. How do you defend yourself against that? Well, that's basically what we've been doing for a long time, is trying to defend ourselves from people who use maximum pressure. Okay, so now if you are using maximum pressure and you're the ruler of of a major country, and you have, so the country started out, let's say, the little tribes, and then somebody would get power, and then it would get bigger and bigger until it's a country, right? And basically dealing with big tribes, and to see, are we at a point where we're deciding who's going to be the emperor of the planet, and use oppression to get there? That goes against universal law. No, we have the right to create what we want, and we're not going to use the pogroms and the genocides to reach that point to put one person on the planet as the emperor. No, and the nice thing about mortality is that it's going to take an awful lot to do that, but some people are trying to make that happen. But the light is a creative substance that when you put a thought form into it, it creates matter. So now what we have is like an overview idea. The plan for the international government is like the overview idea to guarantee the rights of the people to do that, to create the life that they want, to fulfill their purpose in life, and to function, to create by light rather than by darkness. Now, creating by darkness, if it brings fungi that basically destroy your face and your eyes and your lungs, and you die a horrific death, or COVID-19 on a ventilator, hey, let's create something that benefits mankind. So let's start creating by intent rather than by default. Something that benefits everyone. The problem with that is that the first part of the planning process, when you come up with a plan, if you have if you have people who are trying to use maximum pressure, they don't necessarily like the idea of somebody coming up with a plan that benefits everyone, even them. Can they solve problems? Okay, so if Donald Trump, for example, I'll use him, but lots of people are fighting for the top position in the world, most powerful person on the planet. If Donald Trump is doing that, how does he solve problems? Can he solve the problem by making vaccines? Is he solving problems? So it's coming back down to the individual level now, where we have the people, average people have been solving these problems for a long time and have solutions. But we just don't have a voice in expressing them. But now the internet, but now there's the idea of clamping down on things. There's always this kind of thing that occurs in the planning process. And once you get started on that, you'll understand. So right now, the plan for the international government is like an overview idea that will guarantee It'll solve problems. It's setting up a structure to solve problems, bringing together all the experts in the world, getting politics out of the solution. If the U.S. government is a battle between the Republicans and the Democrats, the power is shifting away from Congress, and people will just leave them in the dust. Not overturn the government, but basically the power will just continue to shift away from the people who can't solve the problems. So it's up to us, the average people, to start to be creative. And now this idea about how to create by intent and to solve these problems, that is where we are now for the future, is we get together and we start to solve problems and do it by intent with the planning process. So now, if you are an elderly woman and you would like to create your life and you can't figure out how to do it, now is the time to start to pay attention. Like my two friends from the prayer circle, we didn't know how to do it. I was a homeless woman at the time, and I had no way to solve this problem either. So now we have the problems. Okay, so I have a set of cards that we read. I channeled from Lady Gaia. If you know the root cause of a problem with the planning process, you can solve the problem. So she gave us, through me, these cards, and they're root cause cards, and they explain the root cause of over 20 problems that we're facing as a planet. So what I would like to do is work on the planning process and start to solve these huge problems, like how to stop hurricanes, how to overcome death, how to overcome cancer, how to overcome all these things. And then these major problems, financial collapse, all of these major problems, and then apply the same information. So I have a plan for an international government, a homeless woman who basically is creating by intent, a plan, and step by step I'm working to introduce it. Okay? If I can do that, then the application of that, you can say, is that we're going to create this international government, and then based on all these principles of creativity and light and creating by intent and allowing everybody to create the life that they want. And then, so we're going to start out, let's say, with the idea of the international government, working together to solve the problems based on these 20 major issues, the creating by intent, and then allowing everybody, like the father and the mother idea and the child idea, so that everybody can create the life they want. You'll understand, not just from what I'm saying, I'm just one average person who is working to create this international government, but it'll take everybody on the planet to do it. So what is it that you have to do to be able to help bring world peace? You have to, let's learn to create by intent, overcoming these problems and taking all the things that you learned through a lifetime and of understanding. You were led along a path as part of your soul agreement with your creator to do a purpose in life. And now, if we have this international government that'll help people do it, not an international government to put one person on the top of the heap, we're all equal in this, then we're going to start solving these problems based on these, what God has given us, Lady Gaia has given us, and then we're going to solve the problems based on everybody creating by intent and taking all this innovative ideas, all these ideas, coming up with something new and exciting. And I'm going to give you, I'm like I said, I'm not a good teacher. I'm an average person, and I'm just as messed up as everybody else is when it comes to creativity. And like I said, I didn't know how to help my friends at the prayer circle solved problems, and basically they died of pancreatic cancer. So if we can come up with a cure for pancreatic cancer, that comes from people functioning outside of their capacity, lack of compassion, and basically there's the root cause of pancreatic cancer. They demonstrated to me how to solve pancreatic cancer, and we have a project online for that. So we're going to be solving problems that other people have, and we're going to be working together. If you know somebody who's had pancreatic cancer, you can help solve just by sharing information on our website. I'll talk about that later, though. Just know that we have the Pancreatic Cancer Project. Okay, so there. Do we need to? God never said that we had to live in darkness. God never said that we had to live in fear. Fear not. So, create. I am that I am. The male aspect of God is creative. God is creative. The male aspect is creative. So let's say that the male aspect of God, I am that I am, is the one who has to fight the battles, the male. And he's going, why don't we just create an international government and put disputes instead of fighting them like a war? Why don't we send them to Stonehenge and come up with a protocol that solves the problems? I'm creative. I'm coming up with solutions. Do I have to come up with a solution for a new weapon? Or should I come up with a way to solve problems this way? Okay, does it help to come up with a nuclear power? Nope, and we'll go into that later too. Okay, nuclear power is banned from now on as far as we're concerned. Okay, now, the Lady Gaia is the female aspect of God, and she's nurturing. So she's sharing with us the root cause of the problem, root cause cards, and telling us how to solve these problems. She's nurturing, and she's saying, okay, you've had wars. Now let's kind of come up with a planning process and solving this problem. And now we are going to take this creative aspect and this nurturing aspect and solve problems. Okay, instead of coming up with new weapons that are going to wipe mankind off the face of the planet, anybody who disagrees with us, let's come up with solutions to problems and make it possible for people to overcome the darkness in their life, the fear. Okay, we can overcome, we can create an international government that leaps on new viruses right away. There'll be a transition period, and then what we'll do is we will evolve. We can't uncreate those viruses, but we can evolve out of them so that we never experience them again. Okay, and like polio, nobody gets polio anymore because of the vaccine, but where does that come from? In various parts of the world, polio is still a problem. It's not gone. We have to evolve out of everything and then leave all of that in our past, and then maybe even go back into the past and change things so that we don't keep experiencing these ripples after ripples of effects. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, was creating by intent or by default. Creating with light, it's the same thing. Do we have to experience the viruses, or can we create something that benefits everyone and create with the light? Let's bring the light back. Let's conquer our fears. Okay, fear is when you run away from your fears, they get bigger. Okay, we always have three choices. If we face our fears and we start to create the darkness inside of us, if we face it, it goes away. You look at it without judgment, and it goes away. If you ignore the problem, it can just reach the point where you feel you can't get your life. It's like my friends from the prayer circle, they just continued on the way they were going, but if you run from your fears, you basically, your fears keep getting bigger. And the problem, there's a form of mental illness when your fears flip-flop, and your little fears and your big fears flip-flop, and you end up being consumed by your fears. And that's where people are, like when they create viruses. Their fears have gotten so big that they can't see their way through them. And will be one of our projects is taking on fears and exorcism of demons, because when you go down into the games and you start interfering, that's when your fears become flip-flopped, and you actually get consumed by your fears. Okay, so let's face our fears, the darkness. Let's come up with a creative idea to solve fears like cancer. Okay, let's start facing all of these fears and all the darkness, and just look at them without judgment, and then let's just kind of evolve out of them. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Like, share, and subscribe, but most of all share, because this information is important. And we'll talk more about the information and how it can evolve to the next level by reading the books, because God is better at explaining things than I am. Okay, so I'll talk to you later. Thanks for stopping by.